Welcome, everyone, to the final movie review this week. And we want to say before we begin,
countdown.
thank you for the 1,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. We should do this again next time. Either when I hit 2,000 or when I lose all of you and then you all come back and I get 1,000 again. Whichever one comes first.
Hey, maybe just if you guys want an excuse to get this again, everyone unsubscribe then resubscribe.
Please don't do that. That's a terrible idea.
Well, if they resubscribe, then nothing really changes, other than us having to review movies.
Tell you what, if I hit 1,000 again, we're reviewing the movies again. The same ones.
The same movies.
Yes, the videos will be deleted and we're just going to re-record new sessions. But we're basically going to say the same things, but we're probably going to be even ramblier because we already did this.
That seems like a big waste of time.
On everyone's part. But now it's time to get to one that I talked about briefly before, and then you talked about briefly before with me at one point, but now we're going to talk about it in full detail. Richard Williams' disaster piece, The Thief and the Cobbler. Both
versions, yep.
There's technically a third version, but it's lost to time outside of North America, and it's basically the Miramax version again, just with less voiceovers. So, a brief history of the expanded history of The Thief and the Cobbler. This film began production in 1964 under the title Nasruddin, which was basically an adaptation of a bunch of books, but then there was a falling out with the lead animator, Richard Williams, with the guys who made the books, and then he made it his own thing. And it went through many different titles. The Cobbler and the Thief and the Cobbler, Once, all these different things. And so, the film was independently funded, and it was striving to be the exact opposite of what Disney had. It wasn't an animated, musical, campy thing. It was a surrealist art house film, as you can tell with the artwork done with a Persian kind of style, and just having all this kind of crazy background stuff going on, because Williams was a perfectionist. His attention to detail was extraordinary. As he said, this was going to be his masterpiece, because every artist has a masterpiece. And he even got some big-name people like Sean Connery, Anthony Quayle, and Vincent Price.
I mean, Sean Connery said a grand total of 3 things. And I don't mean 3 lines, I mean 3 words.
Yeah,
exactly. The entire movie. But hey, they got him.
Yeah, they got him. But he made a deal with Warner Brothers after he got notoriety for doing the animation on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And they said, okay, we'll help finance the film, but if it's not done by a certain point, we're going to sell it off to a completion bond company. And by the time that Richard Williams hit his deadline, the film had 15 minutes left to do, which probably would have taken another year. So rather than just extend the contract, which probably would have been cheaper, they sold it off to the completion bond company, who decided to finish the thing as quickly as possible with as little money as possible. However, a guy by the name of Fred Calvert ended up taking over production, and he hated what he had to do to the film, but he did this so that it wouldn't fall into the hands of a worse animator. He had to, quote-unquote, Disneyfy it. You heard right, the art house surrealist film that was intended to be the antithesis to Disney had to become a Disney knockoff, because Aladdin had just come out at this point. And as you can kind of tell with some of the designs of King Nod and the Brigands, or even Zigzag, yeah, you can tell that Aladdin took some influence from this, because, this was in production way before. So they ended up cutting out a whole bunch of scenes, adding unnecessary voiceovers, adding musical numbers, and even adding some scenes in there with just terrible quality animation. And ultimately, the final film was 15 minutes shorter than the recobbled cut, as we're going to get to. And it was released by Miramax under the title Arabian Night. And out of a $28 million budget, it made a couple $100,000 because everyone heard about what happened. And then
that's not good.
Then it did so badly, it got pulled from theaters, and then it was re-advertised as straight to video because, they kind of wanted to save face there. But then in 2006...
Just pretend that it never happened.
But then in 2006, a guy by the name of Garrett Gilchrist ended up making something called a recobbled cut. And that is basically taking all the old footage and all the old storyboards and voice recordings to make the film that Richard Williams had always wanted to see. Despite the fact that it is not now nor will ever be finished, it ends up telling the more complete story and intends what Richard Williams actually wanted to tell. So
And
we're
even
going to
though several scenes are just storyboards and just, like, pencil drawings, it's more than made up for by the fact that it's better than the Miramax version in every possible way.
Yeah, let's talk about the recobbled cut version. But basically, here's the story. There's a young cobbler named Tak who gets taken in by the evil vizier Zigzag because he ends up accidentally attacking him, quote-unquote, with emphasis on Tak. But then the princess falls in love with him, and then there's this kingdom that they live in with 3 gold balls on the minaret, and if they're ever removed, that kingdom will become dead completely. And then there's a thief that's trying to
vulnerable
steal
to
them.
invasion, I guess.
Yeah, and then there's a thief trying to steal it, and that's basically it, because the story and the characters are not the point of the film.
Right, yeah, it's not... The story isn't too deep or anything, the characters aren't too, like, incredibly fleshed out. They're more there as just kind of the working point to... It's like, just a way to convey the art of the movie itself, which is not necessarily the story of the movie. It's just the movie.
Yes, that is true. The only character that's really fleshed out is Zigzag. Everyone else is just kind of there. Well, the thief, I guess, is a little bit, because, you know, he's bumbling, but he does have a bit of a brain when you get down to it. Like the scene where he's going to get his arms cut off.
Right, yeah.
But Zigzag is the only one that really gets, like, full development, because he talks a lot, and he does a lot more than a lot of the other characters, despite the fact he doesn't have the most screen time. He has the most consequential dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, considering the 2 titular characters have no dialogue, or, in the Cobbler's case, 3 words.
Exactly.
At the very end.
Yeah, the thief doesn't talk once. He'll, like, gasp or wheeze every so often, but nothing else.
Yeah.
Nothing else. So, how is the film itself?
The film itself, like I said, the story isn't anything too spectacular, a little cliche, but that's fine, because from just like a visual standpoint, all of the animation, all of the backgrounds, like the facial expression is just so unique, and a lot of it's just like so bizarre and surreal, like all the chase scenes through like the palace, with all like the checkered floors, it's so trippy, but it's so cool.
Oh yeah, and the best part, I think, of the animation is the war machine at the end.
Yeah, that thing is so crazy. From a plot standpoint, it's so ridiculous and like just so contrived, but it looks so cool when it's actually just like playing out.
And it gets taken down so easily.
Yeah, with a single tack.
Yeah, but the best animation, I think, is actually when it's falling apart. When the thief's trying to get the gold balls back. Mm-hmm. That's some of the best parts there. The voice acting is very well done, actually. Despite the fact that the dialogue is kind of inconsequential.
Yeah, like, Vincent Price's weird, creepy, zigzag rhyming is really funny, like, and, like, kind of creepy at the same time, but that's kind of the point, so it works.
I also like how, this is kind of a tangent, you know how mostly with these vizier evil people, it's like, oh, I want the princess so I can get the crown. I like how they give the little touch where even after he betrays the king and goes to King One-Eye, he still wants the princess.
Yeah. It's kind of a little different.
Yeah, so he kind of wants both.
Mm-hmm. I still don't get why he's got blue skin. But I suppose that's not really important.
Nobody has a correct skin color. Tak is like paper white, Zigzag is blue, One-Eye is black and purple, Zigzag's minions are basically a bag of Skittles. It's like, and the thief himself is like kind of bronze.
The king is pretty normal colored.
And I guess Yum Yum is.
Yeah. She's almost like red, though.
Yeah. Yum Yum. Bread.
Oh, that's... that is one other thing that's just kind of an interesting thing, is the character's name. It's like, Yum Yum, Zigzag, it's kind of like... I don't... What's with those names?
Yeah, that's a common wondering thing about the film.
Right. Which, it's more of just a curiosity than like a complaint or a problem, because... if anything, I almost kind of like it, because it's just kind of really unique and kind of bizarre, but it's still a little confusing. Like, who came up with Zigzag? The evil vizier, Zigzag.
I love his feet.
Yeah, his little, like, party popper feet.
That's a great way of describing it.
Like, his beard, like, does the same thing. He's, like, flirting with Yum Yum, and his beard, like, extends. I thought nothing of that the first time I watched it, way back when. But when I just recently rewatched it, it was... I saw that, I'm like, I wonder if that's implying something. On top of that, there's a straight up scene where when the thief is going through the palace where the king is in bed with his mistress from Mombasa.
Mombasa.
Yeah. I didn't really notice that before this last time I watched it.
No, it's so obvious now. There's a lot.
I mean, yeah, it's not like even like a subtle joke. It's just that's what it is.
Yeah, it's just straight up that.
Yeah.
And then there's also like this is only a connotation nowadays, but the 3 golden balls.
Right. Well, I mean, there is the part where like the thief is like on like the whatchamacallit, the high rope or tightrope or whatever.
Yeah.
And like he's like got the balls in a
bag,
in a sack, and they're like hanging down, and it looks really nasty. Like the first time I watched it, I thought those were actually his. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, that's inappropriate. You can't show that.
A lot of stuff with the witch, too. Like, a lot of people wonder in the Miramax version, which we'll talk about soon, most of the witch's scenes are removed, but, well, half of the things she does is getting high, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Also, the witch is easily my least favorite character because her voice really grates on me. That's, like, one of the few things I don't like about the film.
Right. And she's not super important, even.
No.
Like, she just kind of goes into, like, I don't know, you can't even, she's not a very important character.
Not really.
But speaking of just kind of, like, humor and things like that, there's not a huge focus on humor, and the humor that it is mostly slapstick with the thief as he's trying to steal stuff. And all of that is actually, like, really funny, as when he's, like, stealing stuff and just, like, has the worst fortune, like when he climbs up the pipe and then gets flushed down the toilet.
Or like when King Nod is talking about how the kingdom will come to destruction and death, and he's sneaking behind a pillar, and then he ends up stealing from his own pocket. Mm-hmm. Or there's one of my favorite scenes involving the thief, when he finds that giant vase full of like emeralds.
Right.
And he can't get them out.
And the guards show up and he's like just still trying to get it.
Yeah, he's so determined.
But then at the end, like his complete misfortune turns into just like the absolute most impossible luck as he just is walking like really just taking a stroll, and he just like walks through this war machine, and like the cannonball like breaks off the tooth of the gear that's about to crush him, and he like doesn't even bat an eyelash. It's just like,
or when he's the stairs he's walking on just get destroyed, and he's able to walk up the like, stairs as they break.
Right, he's like walking on them as they're falling. Yeah.
And I also love how all of the stuff he goes through, every little thing, ultimately ends with him just going, "Hey, who needs you?" Because like he's about to take the balls back from Tack and just goes like, "Yes, screw it, I don't need this."
Yeah, he's just like, oh well.
When I was watching this with Matt a couple nights ago, at the end when he takes the movie itself, Matt was like, "So that's why it never came out."
Right? Yeah, because the thief stole it.
The thief is like another just great character. He and Zigzag like steal the show. The other surprisingly strong characters are the ones that are in the background, kind of like Yum Yum's nanny or the Brigands.
Right, yeah.
The Brigands were a lot funnier than I remembered them, because I thought they were okay the first couple times I watched it, but watching it again, they're actually some of the best comedic parts.
Yeah, they are really funny. In the Miramax version, they're not so much, and they're more just completely annoying.
Yeah, they don't even really do anything.
They just sing a completely out of left field song that adds nothing.
So, real quick, are there any negatives about the Recobbler cut?
Honestly, like, aside from maybe a couple little nitpicks, like the witch just kind of being inconsequential and kind of annoying, not really. There's really no glaring flaws. I mean, aside from the fact that it's not finished and, like, doesn't exist in its entirety. But that aside, no big glaring issues. Like, the only things I would think of are just, like, little nitpicks.
The one thing that kind of got to Matt, and then that kind of made me realize this too, is the pacing is really inconsistent. Like, it kind of goes at a decent pace, but then at the last third, it just kind of drags. Now, I get the point. It's supposed to show off the War Machine and all this great animation. Like we said, it's the story that takes the back seat to the animation instead of the other way around. But it does go on a little long, because it feels like a really long movie, but it's only an hour and a half, like, exactly.
Yeah. I would agree with that. It does kind of at the end get a little long.
Other than that, though, I really like it. Music great, story great, animation fantastic. So how's the Miramax version, aka Arabian Night? Oh.
All, like, the unique, interesting, like, artistic elements from the original version. Because, like, as we said in the original version, the story isn't really anything special. And the movie just kind of knows that, and it's okay with that because it knows its strengths are in other areas. The Miramax version didn't realize that, so they ignored all the obvious strengths and artistic elements that were there in favor of the lackluster story, and then they just made the story go from pretty simple and a little cliche to just the dumbest, just most boring thing ever.
Even the animation gets hurt, because not only do they change some of the coloring, like they actually saturate some of the scenes so it would blend in more with the new animation from Korea, but as we said, that animation from Korea was significantly lower budget than Williams' team, so it stands out in a country mile. Nowhere is this better illustrated than in the songs. Specifically, She Is More Than This and Bum 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 Bim Bum. Those two. Like, those two look terrible. And they try to do... In Bum 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 Bim Bum, they try to have some designs for the Brigands, like them moving around and stuff in the way Richard Williams would do, but it only serves to show just how bad it is. Like, the shading is off, the coloring is off, the movements are much slower.
Yeah.
And of course, She Is More Than This just looks like a cereal commercial.
It's both of those songs just, like, none of the songs are good, but if I had to pick two that are particularly quite sucky, I'd say those two. Especially She Is More Than This. It's just the most boring, lackluster, copy-paste song ever.
Yeah, and the sad part about the songs is the music is actually really good, but they're sung pretty well, but the lyrics are garbage.
Mm-hmm. And the choreographing is also just so underwhelming and just it's a total yawn fest because
exactly. Also, the film doesn't know how to shut up. The part of the thief in the Cobbler, the whole thing is basically silence. That because you need to have the animation do the talking for you.
It's a lot of visual storytelling and kind of like a lot of emotions are driven through facial expressions. Heck, even Tak, like, doesn't really move his mouth that much. His facial expressions are, like, portrayed through these tacks in his mouth that form in these little shapes, like a little smile.
Exactly. But the thing is, people tend to register visual stuff more than audio. And you're taking that away from them, because on top of the visual, you're also shoving in audio that changes the meaning. Like, they give Tak a needless backstory where he's like, at the time I was a poor orphan working as a cobbler's apprentice, both of which never come up again.
Yeah.
There's also, like, this is Zigzag, the king's vizier. Over the years, he's gained the king's trust, but no one else's. Yeah, like we couldn't get that from like the next scene.
Right, yeah. Matthew Broderick's narration of literally everything is... It's just so pointless. Like...
And I don't dislike
doesn't
Matthew.
add anything. It just tells us everything that we would already know just by seeing it. It's just so...
And I like Matthew Broderick as an actor. I don't mind him, but he's not giving it his A game here at all.
No, he's not.
And I found out why. So the Matthew Broderick and the Jonathan Winters stuff, who voiced the titular thief and the cobbler, although reverse that, they were brought in 5 months before the Miramax version was completed. So this was last minute. And guess who made this decision? Harvey Weinstein.
Bravo.
Yay. As if he couldn't even get worse. But that's Matthew Broderick's side of things. Jonathan Winters. Oh, no.
Oh my gosh. They try so hard to make this character, like, witty and, like, oh, he's got all these funny one-liners. He's like the genie.
They actually, I can't verify this, but I've heard some stories saying that they didn't really write the thief's dialogue. They just showed him some scenes and then said, okay, John, we're going to play this again. Now just say what you think Robin Williams would say.
Yeah, that's...
And the sad thing is, Winters is a very funny comedian, or was, because he's dead, rest in peace. But this is terrible.
Mm-hmm. All of the lines, like there are all these, like, kind of just, like, out of place, like, pop culture references or whatever, and they just don't work. It's just,
yeah.
all of it is just so,
Like, when he's in the bathhouse, he's like, oh, what is this? This must be a Turkish restaurant. He finds, like, the flush thing, because in the original, he finds the golden-crusted flush handle and tries to steal it, but that ends up flushing him. He's like, oh, this must call the waiter. Oh, garçon. And then pulls it, and then he gets flushed. There's only one line from the thief that I thought was funny. One. And it's after bum 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 be bum, he's like, oh, that was just like Les Mis.
yeah.
But even then, it wasn't great.
Right, that's kind of, like, again, like, I kind of appreciate that, because, I don't know, I like Les Mis. But, like, still, it doesn't fit, really. Like, if it was kind of the genie... the thing is, I mean, the genie's, like, pop culture references, you can just kind of give a pass because Robin Williams is just so energetic with it. But also, you can kind of, from a story standpoint and an in-universe kind of thing, like, the genie's this, like, all-powerful entity, so... yeah, sure, he can reference things that won't exist for decades and centuries and millenniums. But, like, this random guy... this thief guy is talking about things like Les Mis and Disneyland. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. And on top of that, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's another thing I noticed about why this doesn't work with the thief. Not only is because it's not well written, but there's a big thing here. Usage. Robin Williams comes in about at the end of the first act for Aladdin. And even then, he has lines other than just constant verbal barfing of pop culture. I mean, not only are his lines more well thought out, but half of them are the pop culture stuff. Not every single one. Whenever the thief is on the screen, and remember, he's one of the stars, so every time he's on screen, it's always some stupid, half-baked, witty line.
Yep, and that's all he does while he's doing the same things as he does in the original. He's just has to add this little commentary that means nothing and tries way too hard to be funny.
Yeah, like where Matthew Broderick tries to make the simple nothing story that wasn't supposed to be the focus, tries to turn into this big epic thing. He's trying to turn the physical comedy into a stand-up routine at a bar. And both of these are not the exact opposite of what was supposed to happen. Also, there's a little bit of a nitpick, but I can't place the thief and Jonathan Winters together. The voice sounds so distant, not just because his mouth never moves, but I always pictured the thief to kind of have a higher voice. I don't know about you.
He kind of looks... I don't know. Like... I don't know. I never really mentally assigned a voice to him, I guess, in my head, but I don't know. I don't know. I just don't picture. I can't imagine him talking at all.
Yeah, but like if he were to talk, I'd kind of imagine I would say Gilbert Gottfried, but he was in Aladdin, can't do that. And then they also add voices to like the crocodiles and Fido, and it's not needed at all. Which I'm surprised with how they try to clean it up. They actually kept Zigzag's death intact. Mm-hmm. Do you remember how that happens?
Right.
Yeah, they also...
Never mind. Keep going.
They also, as I just said, they really try to clean up the film. So a lot of kind of shots that linger, or I guess some of the more lewd jokes, like we mentioned, the part with the thief getting the balls in his cloak, or most of the stuff with the mad and holy witch, it's gone. It's just straight up gone. And not only does that hurt the whole flow of the film, they cut into stuff randomly, and it has a big problem. For example, they cut out the part with the woman from Mombasa, but she's still in the shot. She's still in the shot in the next scene. And I'm not just talking about the bath scene. It's in the throne room scene. It just goes from, "Oh, great King Nod, have no fear. Zigzag, your grand vizier, is here," and then it goes right to Tak meeting the princess, while her Kaaba is still in the background. And it's not just in the background, it's right behind Zigzag.
Mm-hmm. It's just so lazily chopped up and slapped together and just...
Nothing about this thing works. Everything that they took from the original that does work is halved because of everything they try to put this in. And the film would just be bad on its own. But because this wasted 30-some years of a man's life just for this to come out, that makes it worse.
Sad. Yeah.
I mean, just think about it. This guy poured everything, every dollar, every minute of every day into this. And then it turns out to be some Aladdin knockoff that made a couple $100,000. And wasn't even released on DVD until it was too late and nobody cared about the film. The most insulting part about it being released was not only is it basically out of print now, but the first DVD release it ever had was in Kellogg's cereal boxes in Canada. That's right.
Gee, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's right. This multi-million-dollar animation masterpiece spectacle, which ended up getting cut to shreds, ended up getting the cereal box treatment, which I actually think is justified for the Miramax one, but I still feel terrible for Richard Williams. And Richard Williams is so traumatized that he has not only not seen the Cobbler cut and not seen this version, but he refuses to talk about the film because it brings up such terrible memories.
And I can't really blame him.
Fred Calvert still lives in shame of this. Everyone thinks that he did this on purpose, but remember, he said if it didn't go to him, it would have went to someone who would have done an even worse job.
Yeah. Which... That's hard. That hurts to think of. There could have been a worse version. Roger
Corman's The Thief and the Cobbler. M. Night Shyamalan's The Thief and the Cobbler. Adam Sandler's The Thief and the Cobbler.
Oh no.
What a time! No one lives like this except college kids! Adam Sandler plays everybody except for Zigzag.
Oh no.
Because Zigzag is redubbed by Kevin James.
Oh no.
Oh, great King Nod, have no fear. Zigzag, your Grand Vizier is here.
They'd have Tak become just like some lazy man-child who never gets the girl, but then gets the girl.
Yeah, and he's voiced by Sandler doing his Adam Sandler impression.
Exactly.
And then, like, the princess gets, like, well, I guess basically the same amount of personality she gets here, but, like, Zigzag is basically just a bully instead of an evil wizard.
Yeah.
But hey, I guess it could have been worse there, but for what we got, it's terrible. So what are your final thoughts on Arabian Night / The Thief and the Cobbler Miramax cut?
Alright, so the Miramax cut / Arabian Night is just so dumb, so cliche, so boring, uninspired, lackluster. Did I already say cliche?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. None of the characters have any depth. They're just like, oh, I'm shy. Why can't I ever work up the nerve to speak, except in my head, where I talk constantly? Oh, let's make a pop culture reference. I'm a princess. That's the depth of, like, all the characters summed up right there.
You basically summarized the whole movie.
Yep.
I mean, like I said, the film itself is terrible, but because of what it did to this man and his work, I'm right up there with saying that after the Drawn Together movie, this is my least favorite movie. Animated, live action, whatever.
Yeah.
Number 2, and I've seen some terrible ones, let me tell you.
Right. If you just look at the objective side of it, it's just a crappy movie that could have just been ignored if it weren't for its backstory.
Yeah. And even then, if it didn't have that backstory, if this is what it was meant to be the whole time, I'd still say, by golly, look at half of this animation.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it can't get worse than the Drawn Together movie. Nothing can.
No.
Yeah, that's a topic for another day. And I don't recommend you check that out. And I know we won't ever talk about it unless enough people ask. Anyways, what did you guys think of The Thief and the Cobbler? Or the recobbled cut? Or if you actually saw it, The Princess and the Cobbler, which is basically the same thing, except Matthew Broderick is played by somebody else, and the thief just, instead of pop culture referencing, he basically has asthma. Other than that, it's the same movie.
Fun.
Yeah, so just remember, wear what happens when you don't finish school. Thanks for watching, and thank you for the 1,000 subscribers.
Yay! What?